Hello, my bookish besties. How are we doing today? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about every book that I read in the month of May. So, welcome to my May wrap-up. In the month of May, I read a total of 7 books, which is really good for me. I kind of average around 5 to 6. It really just depends on the thickness of the book or how busy that month is. I'm really happy with how May went. 7 books is above average for me and I will take it. It is kind of my personality to be an overachiever, so I'm satisfied. To start off, the first book I read in the month of May was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. This book I gave 2.5 stars. Didn't start the month off with the best rating and best book. This was my Fable Book Club's pick for the month of May. And while I loved the writing and enjoyed some of the characters, I do not get the hype surrounding this book. This book has been so popular. We were all excited to read it, but it was kind of a miss for all of us in book club. Those of us, strangely enough, that listened to it via audiobook loved it, but those of us that read the physical copy or on ebooks didn't love it so much, which I thought was really interesting. So this is based out of the 1960s, and it is about our main character, Elizabeth Zott, who is a chemist. So she works in science, women in STEM, and obviously being in the 1960s, women do not have as many rights or given as many opportunities as men are. And so we walk through that with Elizabeth, of the uphill battle that she goes through, not being given the same opportunity to further her career or to get the credit that she deserves. While I did love the story, I feel like it missed in a lot of ways. What I mean by that, I loved the writing in this book. I thought it was very pretty. And I did enjoy the science aspect as well. It didn't feel like I was reading a textbook, but it was enough information to where I felt like I understood Elizabeth Zott and her being a chemist, if that makes sense. And the woman empowerment in this book was awesome. I loved how Elizabeth Zott was going against all odds and was working so hard to just be a successful chemist as a woman in the 1960s. Even in today's world, like women in STEM, doing jobs that have primarily always been male-led roles, defying all odds. I loved that. What I didn't like about the book, unfortunately, outweighed the good. Elizabeth Zott was highly unlikable. The only time I liked her honestly was talking to her significant other and their relationship, but that's really the only time that I actually liked her, which is kind of sad to say. I love that she pushed against the norm of society back then, but she felt like a 2025 feminist in the 1960s, and I just don't believe that's actually realistic to women fighting for women's rights back then. I just feel that it was unrealistic for that time era. She felt too modern day and not 1960s. The only characters I really liked in this book were the dog, 630. I also loved Harriet and Calvin, and the TV guy, whose name I literally cannot remember. That's kind of another thing about this book, is trying to remember all the characters' names and the relations to Elizabeth was kind of hard, except for her significant other and her daughter. It kind of got a little confusing at the beginning of the book, and I couldn't keep up with the names. For some reason, I couldn't keep that in my brain. But everyone else was kind of meh. Even her daughter. This really bothered me about this book. Elizabeth Zott has a daughter, and the daughter, Mads, is her name, or her nickname. Mads in this book felt exactly like Elizabeth Zott, her mom, but with the mind of a teenager in a 4-year-old's body. The facts that this child at 4 years old was throwing out is just so unrealistic for what a 4-year-old actually would be spitting out. She was not a child. She literally was a teenager in a 4-year-old's body that was the carbon copy of her mother, Elizabeth. And that was so unrealistic. And the daughter was Honestly, I forgot that the daughter was 4 years old sometimes because of the way she was talking to adults, the way that she was fact-checking adults. Like, there was just so many things that I was like, a 4-year-old would not be doing that. I don't care if both of your parents were brilliant chemists and the smartest people in the world with the highest test scores and IQs. You are your own being. And yes, that will feed into it a little bit, but not in the way that Mads was. I've experience with 4-year-olds and they don't talk like that. Another thing in this book that I really didn't like is every single religious character, anyone that had any type of belief, doesn't matter if it was Christianity, Catholicism, a higher power, every religious character in here felt so hypocritical. And I feel like the author really missed a huge opportunity for Elizabeth to be challenged in her beliefs, not to change her thoughts, not to change her opinions, not to change who she is, but having so many religious characters in this book and for the conversation to never be brought up to challenge Elizabeth, I felt was really lacking and disappointing. When some of these characters were introduced, I got excited because I was like, oh, maybe there will be a really good conversation to where we can learn a little bit more as to why Elizabeth acts and thinks the way that she does and the way that she was raised or what she actually believes in. But we didn't get any of that. We basically just got a bunch of hypocritical believers of different faiths, and it honestly was awful. And I know people like that exist that have beliefs and religions, but not everyone is like that. And I feel like it did a really poor job on replicating reality in that sense. So even when these religious characters would say something, I felt like I couldn't take them at their word because they were so hypocritical. Hearing their inner thoughts to themselves about certain things like judging other people or thinking about doing something, and then they would say something that was like morally good, I felt like I couldn't believe them, which was really frustrating and discouraging, honestly, very discouraging. I would have just loved to have seen more challenged and build a more dimensional Elizabeth to where she was challenged in her thinking, to where I could have also believed her and understood why she thought and operated the way she did. So that was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmas. 2.5 stars, not my favorite, unfortunately. Would recommend to very specific people for a very specific reason. But aside from that, not great. The second book I read in the month of May was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I rated this 3.5 stars, which is pretty good considering that I didn't really thoroughly enjoy it the way I thought I would. Let me explain. Going into this book, I had heard a lot of hype, and I know a lot of people that really love this book, and it's one of their top books they've ever read. And for me, I felt like it was extremely hyped up and it fell flat for me. I think only because of the writing style. Daisy is a girl who lives in LA, has a pretty terrible childhood because her parents are not really parents. She gets involved in drugs, alcohol, clubs, other things, but her voice is gorgeous and is getting recognized, and she is learning how to be a songwriter. So she has a very unique voice and people are noticing it. She wants to make it as a performer, and so you follow her along her story of becoming a performer. Also in this book, getting recognized is a band called The Six, which is led by our male main character, Billy. And Billy and his brother start this band together. They become very successful and they're doing a really great job. But then Billy falls into a really rough patch of also getting involved in alcoholism, and so he really struggles with alcoholism in this book. I would look up any trigger warnings before you read this book just because there are some dark and heavy things that I just want you to be aware of before you start it. And so you follow Billy and the band, really making it as a band, getting their name out there, and then Daisy and the Six, the band, cross paths and basically were kind of forced into co-working together on an album. That album blows up and you just see the journey. There's so much more to this than just their journey of making it, but you follow Daisy's story and Billy a little bit more than any of the other characters, but it is written in interview format, which I didn't know going in. I knew that interview format was a part of this book, but I had no clue that it was the whole thing. I didn't love that. I felt like I couldn't super connect to the characters well, and keeping up with all the different stories with all the characters and different point of views and perspectives got really complicated, and I just didn't feel an emotional connection to the characters, unfortunately. I felt bad when things went wrong for them, but I didn't feel super strongly emotionally tied to them. So that is Daisy Jones and the Six, and the second book we read in the month of May. Star rating 3.5. The third book we read in the month of May was Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage, which is the third book in her Rebel Blue Ranch series. It's an interconnected standalone romance series based out of Wyoming. I love this series. This is actually, I think, the first cowboy romance series I've ever read, and I love that it's based out of the West. Now that I'm a girl that lives in the West, I love reading about it, and Wyoming is really beautiful. Terrible to drive through because it's so windy, but it's really beautiful. So this is Teddy and Gus's story, and I love Teddy and Gus. Their relationship is just so funny to me, and I was giggling, I was cackling, kicking my feet, and I just really loved this book. I love Teddy and Gus and their story. It is so much fun. It's like frenemies to lovers. Rebel Blue Ranch is a ranch owned by the Ryder family, and each book follows a different sibling. So this is Gus Ryder's story and Teddy Anderson. Absolutely loved it. I gave this 4 stars and would highly recommend you read the series because it's just really fun. Super easy reads. I think I read this in like a day and a half. Easily bingeable. I will say that the spice is spicy but is skippable. I don't particularly enjoy reading spice. I would say that this is probably on the scale of 1 to 5, probably a 3 or 4 on spice level. So go in with that thinking. But it's super fun. There's also just more to each story. The things that the characters go through, the character growth that happens, and the development in their personal lives is just really fun to walk through with them as well. So Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage was the third book I read in the month of May, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then, fourth book of the month, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I gave this 5 stars. I also have a reading vlog where I read this book and one other book that I'll also be talking about here soon. So you should definitely go watch that if you really want to see me go through it. This follows Haymitch, who is Katniss and Peeta's mentor, but this follows him during his Hunger Games and his experience and what he goes through, and gives you a much better idea as to why Haymitch turned out the way he did and his coping mechanisms. Absolutely blew my mind. I sobbed, I laughed, I felt really, really hard feelings, and I loved being back in this world. I loved the Hunger Games growing up. I read all the books before the movies were even a thing, and I went to every single midnight premiere. It's actually funny that I'm wearing a side braid right now while I'm talking about the Hunger Games, because this just always reminds me of Katniss Everdeen. Side braid. We all did it whenever the movies were coming out. We always had the side braids when going. Don't lie, you did it too. This book is just so gut-wrenching, but also beautiful in devastating ways. I'm not gonna say more than that. This was 5 stars and the 4th book that we read in the month of May. If you haven't read it yet, you definitely should. It's so worth it. The 5th book I read in the month of May was the final installment of An Ember in the Ashes series, A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. Oh Lord. This series has instantly risen to the top of my list, and I'm telling everyone that they need to read it because it is so good. It is a YA series. There's 4 books, so it's not crazy long. This, I believe, is the thickest book at 515 pages, so totally doable. It is worth every single second of your time. I rated this 5 stars, but the series as a whole is 6 stars. Every single book in the series I gave 5 stars. I do not give 5 stars easily. So the fact that I had 2 5-star reads back to back, and I captured that all in that reading vlog. This is the second book that I read in that reading vlog. Absolutely incredible. This is a series that follows a girl named Laya and her journey of rescuing her brother, falling into the hands of dangerous people, making her way out, trying to escape a army called the Masks, which are basically assassins who do brutal killings of everyone that basically isn't a mask, kind of. It's such a good series that you need to read it to find out more. This is obviously the 4th book in the series, so I can't say much about it without spoiling a lot of things that happen. But just know that you will not be disappointed with this series because Sabaa Tahir has also become one of my favorite authors, and I'm excited to read more of her works. Absolutely incredible. 5 stars. You definitely need to pick up that series. The 6th book I read in the month of May was Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage, which is the 4th and final book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and was unfortunately my least favorite in the series. Sad. Oh well. I still enjoyed it, it just wasn't my favorite. So this one follows Camille Ashwood and Dusty Tucker, which I know I said earlier that each book follows a different sibling in the Ryder family. This one doesn't, but Dusty Tucker is basically a Ryder. He grew up with them, he's been with a part of that family for a really long time, so he's kind of like an honorary son. This book starts off on her wedding day, and then her groom leaves her. It was a arrangement made, so neither of them wanted to get married. It causes a lot of friction between her and her parents because this whole arrangement was made, unfortunately, for the betterment of her parents and their business. So you walk through all of the emotions that Camille is going through when dealing with being left at the altar, having parents that are not actually there for you and they only care about themselves and their business, and also being a single mother. She actually co-parents with Gus Ryder, so this book, Lost and Lassoed, has a child in it, and you will love her. I absolutely love this little girl. She is so precious. So you follow the mom now, Camille, navigating being a single parent, starting your life over, not having supportive parents who are there for you during a emotional and hard season, figuring out what you want to do with the rest of your life. She is a lawyer and she loves being a lawyer, but not necessarily her job. So you follow her and Dusty Tucker. This is a second chance romance, and that was so much fun, but Camille got on my nerves. She got really annoying real quick. She's a lawyer, so she is obviously brilliant. She's smart, but there were some moments where I questioned her and her actions and her thoughts a lot. Wasn't my favorite. The 3rd act breakup that happened in here was so stupid. It felt that it was just thrown in there just to have a 3rd act breakup, when more so than not with second chance romances, I feel like there doesn't need to be a 3rd act conflict or 3rd act breakup because they've already been through so much together. It's a second chance, so whatever broke them up the first time is the conflict, and then when they re-find each other, it's working through that and creating a lasting relationship. So what happened in the 3rd act conflict just was like, was that really actually needed? I didn't love it. I still gave it 3.5 stars. I still recommend this series, and I still recommend you read it. I will say that this is spicier. I would definitely give this a more 4.5 spice rating, but also still skippable. Doesn't really affect anything. So this was the 6th book that I read in the month of May, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then for the final book, we have Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. This follows an artist, Sadie Montgomery. She comes from a family that has some trauma. Her mom died. That's a big part of the story, not a spoiler, tragically and unexpectedly. Her mom was an artist, her dad is a doctor, and her dad, when she was going off to college, really wanted her to pursue something in the medical field. She's super passionate about art, and she said, no way, I'm gonna be an artist, and she's trying to make it out in the world by being an artist, following in her mom's footsteps. Then something really traumatic happens to her. She almost dies. She wakes up in a hospital bed and has something called face blindness. So she cannot make out faces. So she now has to go through the journey of learning how to recognize people without seeing their faces. Oh, and I forgot to mention, she made it to the top 10 out of, I think, like 1,000 or 2,000 applicants into a art competition that her mom was trying to win before she died. And so this is a really big deal for her, and it is for a portrait. It can't be a self-portrait. It has to be a portrait of someone else. So imagine being an artist where your livelihood literally is you being able to paint other people's faces. You're getting into this amazing competition where there is a huge money prize. She's a starving artist. Okay, enough said. Where you are lucky enough to have face blindness all of a sudden while in the middle of getting ready for this competition. I ended up giving this 3 stars. This is my second Catherine Center book. I've read the rom-comers. Didn't really love that one. This one was okay, slightly better, but just okay. The main character, Sadie, is the president of Delulu University. She was so delusional sometimes. Going through her thought process drove me crazy. Well, I just felt that she was super delusional at times, and the things she was saying just didn't make sense for a mature adult whose frontal lobe is fully formed. She is also very pessimistic, and it drove me up the walls how pessimistic she actually was. I know that that exists, but it just felt over the top. Kind of made her a little too much unlikable. She's the grumpy, but just the kind of grumpy that you're like, is that just a little too far? Is it more of a woe is me, everyone feel bad for me? Or is it actually like, hey, I'm struggling with being positive? She also judges people really harshly. First impressions with her really do matter, and she judges a lot. She did have a lot of growth towards the end, and I did love getting to see that. Her starting off as heavy pessimism, harsh judger, starving artist, and seeing her growth with her face blindness and learning to adapt to the new life that she wasn't sure it was going to be temporary or lifelong. During this, she obviously is struggling with face blindness, but she also meets a man, and she doesn't want to tell anyone that she has face blindness because she thinks it's embarrassing. Just to give you a little hint as to how annoying she got sometimes. It follows her story of realizing she's falling in love. Is it actually love? Is it something different? You just walk with her through the whole journey. Her best friend in this book kind of sucked, and I really did not like her. She was not a good friend to someone who's going through something pretty freaking traumatic. I didn't like her, so that also hit the book a little hard. And then between the main female character and male character, some communication of simply just asking, hey, what do you do for a living, would have cleared up a lot of things. It just felt a little unrealistic, because don't we all, when we first meet someone, we introduce ourselves and we get talking, and at some point, jobs and what you do for a living will come up. So I just found that just felt a little out there. The last 20% of the book really did make up for it, because honestly, for the first portion of it, I was not loving it. I was not enjoying it, and I thought it was going to be either a DNF or like a 2-star, maybe 1.5. But I ended up, with the last 20% of it, really enjoying it and seeing how things were then communicated and followed through, and the growth that happened for each character, and what happened in the end was satisfying. I do wish that I was able to see that sooner in the book though, and it wasn't just in the latter 20% of the book. So that was the 7th book of May, giving it a whopping 3 stars, which is still good. So these are all the books I read in the month of May. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what your favorite read from the month of May was. I would love to discuss with you. And if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts about them. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on that little bell notification so that way you get notified every single time I post. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!